immediately and introduce to you our next speaker, Dr. Aruna Gnanadason, who is joining us from Chennai, India. Aruna has been working with the WCC for many years. She was elected to the post of General Secretary of the World Communion. Sorry, I mistook the line. She directed the global program on women in church and society of the WCC, and also coordinated its program on justice, peace, and creation. And that was between 91 and 2009, if I'm not mistaken, Aruna. So thanks a lot for being with us, and the floor is yours, Aruna. Welcome. We can't hear you right now.
I'm sorry, I just unmuted myself. For one thing, I think I have miscalculated the time, Martin. I thought I'm supposed to come in at 6:30 Indian time, but I think it was 5:30. So I'm sad I missed Nancy's presentation and most of Chris's. At least I got a little bit of Chris. I'm grateful for that. I'm not going to speak about what I wrote. I must tell you, it was very hard to write this paper because you know what's happening in India just now. Every morning when you wake up and you put on your phone, you see there's a message about one more person you personally know who has either got the virus and is admitted in hospital or has died. In fact, many have died. A lot of people that each of us know we have lost in the last 2 months. It's been very difficult because you know all along that it was not necessary. The lack of preparedness by our government is basically because of the adamance of our Prime Minister, who was much more interested in building a house for himself in Delhi, destroying many old buildings, including the parliament, and rebuilding a parliament building. And he wants to keep pace with the rest of the world and have these extravagant structures. So that's where his concentration lay. And he has also been having huge election rallies, because there were the elections in Calcutta, in West Bengal, and that was a state which he really wanted to win, to consolidate the power of the ruling party. So he himself organized big gatherings, and they became super spreaders. And you see what has happened in the country. There was also the permission given to this big celebration of Hindus who come once in a year to dip themselves in the Ganges, the holy river, the Ganges. And it was tens of thousands of people gathering together in one small city. So all this were things that he did literally and should take responsibility for, but then we now don't have either. The most important commodity we don't have is oxygen. So you literally have the country gasping for breath. And you have seen enough images of this on the TV, as well as if you read any articles about what's happening, you will get the gruesome details about how the government has literally caused the death of so many thousands of people. In my city alone, in the past 24 hours, 4,500 people have died. And in the city of Bangalore, it's 23,000 who have died in one 24-hour cycle. So it's just beyond understanding, and it's only growing. It's too late to try to stop it. Of course, they were so late on the vaccines. And there, of course, there's one important dimension of the vaccines, which I should talk about, of how we are interconnected as this globe and how important it is for us to recognize it. One, that if it continues as it is in India, it will spread to other parts of the world, however much you attempt to keep it out. And you know this virus is dangerous and very difficult to control. But more important than that has become this question of what the South African president has called vaccine apartheid, because the European Union is refusing to give the patent for the production of the vaccine. India has the infrastructure, the possibilities for reproducing the vaccine, for producing the vaccine fast. But if we had the patent for it, it would be easier. So far, it's been given to one institution in India, which is producing vaccines for the whole world. And that, therefore, India cannot get a major share of that. And therefore, AstraZeneca has kept control, in fact, of the vaccine, even though the factory is right here in India among us. Then, of course, there is the challenge of the question of how it was. One is the economic chaos that this pandemic has caused in India. The economy is in shambles, to say the least. But added to the fact that there is this economic injustice, and the WTO says that 50 million of the absolute poor live in India. So, and that was said by the chief economist of the WTO. So we are in a very bad state economically. But added to this, we have in India other forms of injustice. Of course, patriarchy is strong in India, and women, there have been a spate of mass rape of women, gang rapes of women in different parts of the country. Domestic violence is on the increase, and a whole range of struggles that women in India go through. And then we have the terrible caste system, which has ensured that the Dalits, who are the outcasts in the caste hierarchy, are also discriminated against, even in the treatment of the COVID. So there are many forms of injustice, and that's why I took this case study of India as my example, to show that people, if you want to define what empire is today, it's not only the economic empire. Along with it comes caste, race, caste, race, and even sexuality. All these things are playing into each other, and India has half its population living with a lot of difficulty, struggling against the COVID pandemic, and somehow surviving. And there doesn't seem to be really any help that the government is giving to the people. In fact, the central government has literally washed its hands off and told the states, you take care of your people. So now you have states competing with each other for the vaccine, and now getting into the international market to buy vaccines from other countries. In total, it is a big mess, and it is all totally the mishandling of the government, the present government. The only positive thing that has come out of this is that people are realizing that it is the present nationalist Hindutva government which is at the heart of the problem of the people. Now, where has the church and the ecumenical movement been in this? The church has continued to do its charitable work. There has been a lot of engagement by the church in providing relief for people who are really struggling, etc. But then it has not raised the tough questions, including why religion is playing such a pivotal role in India today. Being a Muslim in India is dangerous, to say the least, because they have brought in this a law that now every Muslim will have to prove that they have been living in this country for almost 2 generations before they'll be given citizenship in the country. They have already been living here, but yet they have to provide all kinds of documentation, which is impossible for them to get if they want to continue to live here, all under the pretext that these are people from Bangladesh and Pakistan who are coming in, bringing terrorism with them, and the same language you hear all over the world, you hear now in India, a country which has for long had all people living together, and there has been no problems. Religious communalism was never a problem in India till very recently, or it was there, but not to the extent it is there now, with the Hindus taking over power literally and calling the shots. Now, I would also like to, from there, I give you that as the example, just to say how interconnected we are as peoples of the world. I gave this as a microcosm of what happens globally. We are not only divided as North and South or the rich and poor, but we are also divided by many layers of division that is keeping us in the place where we are. As you said, I was working with the World Council of Churches at the time when the Justice, Peace, and Integrity of Creation process began. And I remember the hours and hours it took for a discussion on why it should be called the JPIC process in the first place. And the arguments and the reasoning that went, and the careful thinking that went into calling that part of our work the Justice, Peace, Integrity of Creation. The problem came when it became a program. Then, when it became a program, there were the claims that how can one team only say that you're dealing with justice? All of us are dealing with justice. And, or how can you say that peace is not important to the, is not important to the International Affairs Department, no? The team which works on international affairs. And we got into this quibbling over who does what. And unfortunately, it was also economic, to be very honest, because the Justice, Peace, Creation process was drawing a lot of income, because people were concerned about these issues too. They were concerned about women. They were concerned about racism and of indigenous peoples. These were the programs the people wanted, whether they were people of the North or of the South, everywhere. I remember after the 2006 assembly that was in Brazil, there was a fascinating discussion because some of the churches, particularly from Europe, wrote complaining to the General Secretary that there was too much focus on justice, peace, and integrity of creation and not enough on the other agendas of the World Council of Churches. That was from the North. And from the South, there were letters saying, you didn't do enough. There was not a strong indigenous people's presence there. There was not strong evidence that you are supporting the Dalit movement there, etc. So finally, nobody was happy. Now, I think that when I got your letter, Martin, and this sort of invitation to be part of this process, I was really excited because, like Chris said, I felt this is a moment for a new beginning. This is, the COVID at least has sort of stopped life in a way. My city now is in lockdown. There's nothing on the roads. Everything is dead. And perhaps animals are here and there having some fun because finally they're getting some space. Humans are moving out of the space. But so this should be a moment for us to rethink, rejig ourselves. The churches need to rejig themselves because church life has been zero in India. There have been some attempts at online worship experiences, but very few Indians understand what it is to be looking at a camera and praying that way. So they have and less people are interested in the church. And if we are not careful when they do reopen, we may not have as many people as we claim we have always in our churches. So a pastor's role has been completely changed because no longer is a pastor's role to prepare for a worship, to organize the life of the churches, etc. Their life has changed and they are now more in demand. I feel that our pastors have much more work now because people in their congregations are dying. So they are needed and they are not even able to go and visit people. So all their counseling and help has to be online or in distance. And so there is all the problems that they face. So it's a Kairos moment, I feel, for the churches and the ecumenical movement to rethink what they should be and how we can move forward, how we can reposition ourselves once again as we were at one moment. The ecumenical movement had made some tremendous contributions at one moment in the history of the world. And then we drifted into this maintenance of an institutional life and maintenance of programs rather than the spirit of the justice, peace, and integrity of creation. It was never intended to be a program. It was supposed to be a movement which will drive the ecumenical movement. And it was never given that opportunity because that's the way we think. We think institutionally, we think programmatically. We needed to have a structure. So this is a structure we built, and there was a lot of struggle. I remember having this interesting discussion when they were saying, why do you think that justice belongs to you as a group? It belongs to the whole World Council of Churches. So I said, yes, we will drop justice from justice, peace, and the integrity of creation when faith and order drops faith. So you had this I mean, we could only laugh about it, and because we were constantly negotiating. And finally, I think they made a big mess. I'm sorry to say it. Finally, the work that we were doing and which was drawing interest and income suddenly lost the clientele. And people everywhere had also got sort of, people started to ask, what is the World Council of Churches doing? So I think that it gives us an opportunity now, and your process is encouraging me to think of how important it is for us to use this as a time to, as the community of Christians who are interested in the ecumenical movement, to offer a new vision of what it could become. We have just now heard, I mean, we are going through what's happening in Palestine. And I almost feel that we, the World Council of Churches, at a point betrayed Palestine. And now we are seeing this, and we are listening to world leaders justifying Israel's bombing of Gaza, saying that they have their right to defend themselves. What about the rights of the Palestinian people who don't even have a place that they can protect and claim as their own? So these are crucial times for the churches to come together to offer a word of hope for so many communities of people. Someone just reminded me of the whole indigenous peoples movement and how much more support they need, which was given at a time. There was a strong program with indigenous peoples, and then suddenly that just disappeared from the scene. Anti-racism work, I mean, it continues. We have modern day forms of slavery, and which need to be addressed. So that also has been sort of watered down here and there. It's sort of coming in here, coming in there, but it's not strong enough. So I'm not saying, let's go back to that glorious past. That's not my point. We are in a different moment of history, but we have an opportunity to reimagine what the ecumenical movement is about and where it is most needed. And I do believe it is these communities who are struggling to survive and to have a life who need us to be with them at this time. So I hope that this process will lead to this bringing back the spirit of the justice, peace, and creation, and not integrity of creation, and not just a program. So it is not in defense of a program, it's in defense of a vision for the World Council of Churches. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Aruna, for reminding us of all those challenges which we are confronted with, and for reminding us also of the mission